dedicated to empowering you with information
to make positive choices
and be advocates for your overall well-being.
Welcome to The Health View.
Welcome to The Health View. I'm Yvonne Dunitz, and today we're going to be talking about the Ordinance 21, which deals specifically with raising the age of tobacco-related products. And my guest is Attorney and Alderman Ernest Jenny. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Ernie, tell us a little bit about why you decided to really provide the leadership related to this ordinance and why you felt it was important to do it.
Well, I can't take credit for the leadership because this January I read in the paper that Keene had passed a similar ordinance. I think probably the same exact ordinance, raising the age at which people can buy tobacco products to 21. And that includes cigarettes and cigars and pipe tobacco, but also this new thing we've been hearing about, the so-called e-cigarettes or vaping devices. Mm-hmm. They're technically called electronic nicotine delivery systems. And that I read that Keene had passed this, and I was surprised because as most people know, since I became an alderman, I found out that we can't do anything in the city unless the state legislature has enabled us to do it. That's the type of, some states, they're home rule states where the cities and towns decide and what to do. In New Hampshire, it's the state legislature that controls the state. And the cities and towns can only do what the state legislature enables it to do. And so, for example, the plastic bag issue.
Right.
We in Nashua cannot we cannot regulate plastic bags here because the state legislature has not enabled us to do that. So I was surprised to find out that Keene raised the age to 21. So I looked into it and I found out that that the law in New Hampshire currently that the state legislature has passed is that you have to be 18 to buy tobacco-related products. But that law, interestingly enough, has a provision in it that says the local cities and towns can have a more stringent provision. They can have a higher age if they decide to do that. That was a surprise to me, and I thought, that this sounded like a good thing to do. I was well aware of the evils of tobacco. I think most of us are aware of the tobacco litigation and how the tobacco companies were brought before the Senate. They had the hearings. That's and right. The tobacco executives swore that, oh no, nicotine is not addictive. And they ended up being sued by the state's attorneys general all over the country. And they reached a global settlement acknowledging that nicotine is addictive, that cigarette smoking is bad, tobacco smoking is bad. And that's when they started putting the labels on mm-hmm. the cigarette packages mm-hmm. and the tobacco packages. And part of that settlement, they agreed to turn over all of their internal documents. And a bunch of lawyers around the country, they dumped, the tobacco companies dumped like warehouse loads full of documents. And a bunch of lawyers sifted through all of that stuff, and they found memos showing that the tobacco companies not only knew mm-hmm. that nicotine was addictive and that tobacco was bad for you and it caused all kinds of problems, respiratory problems and cancer. Not only did they know that, they actively suppressed that information. They were even advertising that cigarettes were safe for people. It wasn't as bad as everyone thought. And the and in those internal documents, they showed that the tobacco companies had identified the youth of this country as the next generation of their customers, and that if they could get young people to start using these products, then these people would probably be hooked for life, addicted. They would, and that they would be able to have customers for life, that they would preserve their business. And so I knew about that. So I thought this would be a good thing. And I contacted Janet Valuk, who is a former health teacher in the national school
Right.
system. And she's works now, she's retired from the school system, but she works with the National Prevention Coalition, which is dealing with drugs and
Yes.
cigarettes and all of that stuff. So I called her and said, "What do you think about this, Janet? Do you think this would be a good idea?" And she said, "Absolutely, this would be a fantastic thing." And she started cluing me into the e-cigarettes, these vaping devices, and invited me to a presentation at the library that Breathe New Hampshire presented.
Yes.
And my wife and I went and we learned about these vaping devices and how they're, the most popular one is manufactured by a company called Juul, Juul. It was originally designed by some Stanford students, graduate students, as a smoking cessation device. And but it has turned into a very popular device used by mostly young people as an alternative to cigarettes, but it doesn't have all of the bad things that tobacco has, but it's got its own set of bad things. And people don't know, and I think parents especially don't realize that these things contain nicotine, and they contain other chemicals. They, the flavorings. I don't know if you've heard about popcorn lung. People who make microwave popcorn, the people who work in those factories developed these problems with their lungs because of the chemicals used in the microwave popcorn. When we eat it, it's not that bad. I mean, it's got its own problems, but it doesn't affect your lungs. But the people working in the factory were getting diseased lungs because dealing with these chemicals. And those same chemicals are in these vaping devices. Things like formaldehyde, benzene, volatile organic compounds, things that can cause cancer and cause other respiratory problems. The devices have a little heating element. There's a battery that heats up a heating element, and that heating element heats up the vaping solution, the juice they call it. They're really nicotine salts. They heat up those things, and when those things get hot, the metal that they're made out of breaks off, and people are breathing that in that vapor. The vapor is a misnomer. Vapor sounds like water vapor, like steam, but this is an aerosol, and in that aerosol it has nicotine, and it has these other things that can harm you. But the nicotine is addictive. It's the same nicotine that's in tobacco products. That's where nicotine comes from, the tobacco plant. So kids who use this, and they're flavored, they have flavors
Right.
like mint,
Right.
creme brulee,
Yes.
mango, other types of fruits. the packaging, they look like fruit juices or kid juices that those little box juices. They look just like that. So kids start using this stuff because it smells good, it tastes good, not realizing that there's nicotine in there, and they become addicted to the nicotine. And so they become addicted to the nicotine, and then oftentimes they will graduate to cigarettes because the cigarettes have a higher hit on the nicotine. It delivers the nicotine at a higher level. So after my wife and I attended that thing, and we found out that this stuff, these vaping devices, are in the high schools, they're in the middle schools. There was a couple there with their son who's in the 5th grade at one of our charter schools. And they said that he is addicted. And they had no idea that what he was using was an addictive thing, that it had nicotine in it, that it was harmful in any way. And so after attending that, I sponsored this ordinance, and I think that anything we can do to help kids avoid this pathway to addiction, certainly to nicotine, and the medical people tell me when we had the first meeting about this before the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee, people who showed up to testify, Bobby Bagley, who's the director of our health department, came and spoke in favor of this. And she said that this is a real problem in our schools today. And she said that the tobacco or the nicotine addiction leads to more serious addictions like opioid addiction. And she said that she said that raising the age at which people can buy this stuff prevents younger kids from getting it and starting on this pathway to addiction. So she spoke in favor of it. Dr. Albie Budnitz, who's been on this show talking about the vaping devices and tobacco, he appeared before the committee and recommended that they pass this, that for the same reasons. And Dr. Stephanie Wolf Rosenblum, who's a pulmonologist and vice president of Southern New Hampshire Medical Center, she came and spoke about it in favor of it. So the people who testified in favor of it were experts in this field, medical people in town with great reputations, all encouraging the aldermen to pass this. The people who spoke against it was the fellow who runs Castro's Cigar Shop, a fellow that runs something called Two Guys Cigars, and there was a fellow from the Vaping Association who spoke against it, and another guy representing tobacco store retailers who spoke against it.
And what were their points?
The guy from Castro's said that he didn't think that cigars were a problem. He said that the idea that a young son couldn't buy his father a cigar for Father's Day was ridiculous. And Dr. Wolf Rosenblum pointed out that there is more nicotine in a cigar than there is in an entire pack of cigarettes. and she told this heart-wrenching story about how her father died from COPD, pulmonary disease, and which he got from smoking. And the only thing he ever smoked in his lifetime were cigars. So I don't think the pushback that I've received from the other aldermen, I think everyone that has spoken to me has acknowledged the medical evidence
Okay.
that tobacco, nicotine, those things are bad for you, and they don't dispute that. And what some people have raised, the issue that some people have raised is that in New Hampshire, the law defines someone who's 18 as a legal adult, and that therefore, if you're an adult at 18, you ought to be able to make all the same choices that older adults can make, and that we shouldn't be making a distinction between 18 and 21. So the to that point, the medical people have told me that that the younger the brain is, that the human brain really doesn't develop fully. For men, they say it's 25. For women, it's a little younger. But to the 20s, the people their brains aren't fully developed. They don't really appreciate the decisions that they make or the full consequences of the decisions they're making. And we recognize that in the law. Even though you're 18 and you can vote, you can't run for state senator, governor's council, governor. You can't run for any federal office. You can't rent a car. You can't buy alcohol. If this marijuana bill passes, that's going to be 21. You can't get a commercial driver's license to drive a truck that has hazardous material in it. You can't get a commercial driver's license to drive across a state line in interstate commerce at 18. You have to be older. So the law recognizes a distinction. And I was surprised to find out that in Nashua, the Nashua Humane Society won't even let you adopt a pet at 18. You've got to be older. So they recognize that at 18, you're not able to make all of the decisions and fully understand and appreciate those decisions that people that are a little older can. And the medical people tell me that the younger the brain is, the more susceptible it is to addiction.
Correct.
So the younger you are when you start to smoke, and it doesn't take many cigarettes or many puffs on these vaping devices to become addicted. Your young brain, the part of your brain that is susceptible to this, I'm not a medical doctor, but the things in your brain that the different types of receptors, catch on to this nicotine more the younger you are. So the younger you are when you start, the more likely you are to become addicted, and the more difficult it is going to be for you to stop once you realize that you shouldn't be doing this. So, the idea that that 18 you fully appreciate and should be able to decide to do this yourself is not, there's some problems with that argument. The other thing is that the people who say, well, if they're 18 or if I'm 18 and I'm a legal adult, I ought to be able to make I ought to be able to make my own decisions to do what I want to do, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. Well, it does hurt other people. When you smoke, that smoke doesn't it doesn't go into your lungs and stay there. It gets expelled into the air.
So that's secondhand smoke.
The people around you are affected by that secondhand smoke, and the aerosol that you emit when you use the vaping device. So the people around you are experiencing that thing without any choice in the matter. You're harming them. If you're a parent, especially a pregnant woman, and you're using, smoking or using these vaping devices, the baby that's in your womb is being affected by that. You're hurting that baby. And once the baby is born and you have children around you, if you're using these products, it's affecting them. The amount of money that we spend in New Hampshire every year treating people who have diseases of various kinds caused by smoking is over $700 million each year. And we're all paying for that. We all pay for that in higher insurance premiums or in taxes. The taxes that fund Medicare and Medicaid, the VA health system. All of that is being used to pay for people, to that degree, who are suffering diseases from having smoked tobacco.
So, Ernie, the process that's ahead of you related to the ordinance and what the aldermen have to do is what?
Well, right now it's before the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee. At their last meeting, a lot of people who wanted to come and talk before the committee couldn't come that night. It was the end of school vacation and there were conflicts. So the committee tabled it until April 1st. So on April 1st, people will have an additional opportunity to come and speak to the committee. In the meantime, you can certainly, if you have feelings about this, for or against, you can contact your alderman, not only your own ward alderman, but the alderman at large. Let them know how you feel. And the committee will be dealing, after they hear more testimony on April 1st, they can either vote on it that night or they could table it for another month to give them more time to think about it and talk about it and get more information. It'll be up to the committee what they do. I'm not on that committee, so I can just talk at that same meeting just like everyone else can. Eventually, once the committee votes on it, they will either recommend final passage of this ordinance as is, or they could amend it and recommend that it be passed as amended, or they can vote to that it shouldn't be passed at all, that it's inexpedient to legislate. Once it gets referred, then it'll be referred to the full Board of Aldermen with their recommendation, with the committee's recommendation, and then the full board will vote on it to either adopt the committee's recommendation or to do something different.
So the public can gain more information about when these meetings occur on the city website?
Yes, all the meetings are posted on the city website.
And that is
So it's
NashuaNH.gov?
Right, exactly, NashuaNH.gov.
And at that point, is there specific information on the website that they would go to where they could learn more about this ordinance and what it covers?
They can, yes, they can go to the city website. There's a menu at the top,
Yes.
and you have to, find your way through it. But there is a section called proposed ordinances, and you can go look at those proposed ordinances, and you can see this ordinance there. You can look at the committee. All the committees, have their hearings are all posted. So this Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee, their agenda will be posted, but that meeting is April 1st. That's the next time that anything will happen.
And for enforcement of this, is that discussed in committee also on how, if they vote to approve this, how it in fact will be enforced?
So the ordinance, as it is now, provides that that it is illegal to sell or buy or give away or possess tobacco or tobacco-related products, which includes the vaping,
e-cigarettes,
the stuff, unless you're 21 years old.
Okay.
And if for the first offense it's a $50 fine, for subsequent offenses it's a $100 fine.
Okay.
As far as enforcement is concerned, it'll be enforced.
The same way that it is with alcohol?
Yes, it'll be enforced by our police department, just like right now the law is 18.
Correct.
So if you're under 18, the police enforce the law that right now at 18. This would they would just be enforcing it if you're under 21, and in some ways it'll be easier because, like alcohol, you have to be 21 to buy or possess alcohol. So it would be consistent with that.
Correct. So it
And
would make it
so everybody
the
who
same.
has a driver's license, if you're over 21, you've got a horizontal license. If you're under 21, it's a vertical license. So people, bartenders and people in grocery stores, when they check your license, it's easy for them to see whether you're 21 or not.
What other objections have people raised?
A lot of people have said that just doing this in Nashua is not going to accomplish anything. They feel that it should be done statewide and not city by city or town by town. And I agree that if we did it statewide, it would be much more effective. But our state legislature has not chosen to do it statewide. They've had a couple of opportunities and they've not done it. So raising the age to 21 has been shown by research that it can cut in half the number of people under 21, and especially the under 18, who get access to this and start on this path of smoking and getting addicted. Needham, Massachusetts, in 2005 was the first town in Massachusetts to do this. They raised the age to 21 when everybody around them, the whole state of Massachusetts, but all the towns around Needham were still at 18. And within 4 years, the smoking rate at Needham High School was reduced by 47%. So the kids there could go elsewhere. They could go to Dedham, they could go to Newton, Boston, all around Needham, and get cigarettes at 18. But just by raising it in Needham, it reduced it by half. And I think that even though this isn't foolproof, yes, people say, they'll be able to go to Hudson and buy it. As long as, until Hudson does the same thing, yes. But even if it discourages half of our kids, or even a quarter of our kids, even if it's a few kids, if it's your kid, isn't it worth doing?
We really appreciate your taking the time to explain this, and we want to remind the audience to go to www.nashuanh.gov to learn more about it. But also go to the Health View at youtube.com and search for the program that we did on what is vaping to help you understand this topic a little more. Thank you very much for all that you do. We appreciate it. Until next time.